Power outages could last days after shootings at substations. I'm in the construction industry and lead times on some electrical components are 12 months. I would assume any fix at this point would be temporary. So, domestic terrorism investigation, anyone? What worries me the most is the cat's out of the bag. Nutjobs now know they can black out large areas with a few shots, so I suspect we're going to see a rash of these. For those of you just tuning in, look up the Metcalf incident in San Jose a few years back. It's cold in NC, 31 degrees this morning. The hospital in Moore County is running on generator power, so it should be okay. But doctors' offices and urgent cares can't open. There is a lot of flu virus in that area, so those people will go to the hospital. So an already overburdened hospital running on generator power with staff who've had to sleep in cold homes, will be further overwhelmed. Schools are closed. There's no traffic lights, so there are car accidents. Also, some right-wing lunatic had a problem with men in dresses. Used to work in the wastewater industry, it's crazy vulnerable to such things, and often just a single master lock padlock stopping someone from doing something. Not surprised at all to learn that the electric side of life is just as open to trouble. My wife had a headache for 2 years with no doctors at UNC and Duke recommending the specialist in Moore County. She's had an appointment since February for today to see that specialist in Southern Pines, but because of some yahoos hating drag, her appointment is postponed until. Shootings is a funny way of spelling domestic terrorist attacks. I'm just saying it's weird that this is being glossed over in the news. Nobody is calling it what it is. The idea that this could have been entirely over some idiots who got paranoid about men in dresses would be funny if it weren't horrible, outrageous, and murderous. This is domestic terrorism. I want these people thrown in jail. This shows that it would take 5 or 6 coordinated attacks to put the entire U.S. in the dark. Harden our infrastructure now. The shooters are probably the same people that wouldn't support a robust and smart power grid. Substation engineer here. They will bring in a mobile substation on one or more big flatbed trailers and within a day or two have it back up and running. Then it will take who knows how long to get a spare main transformer moved there and permanently installed. 2 weeks or so tops. A coordinated attack like this at dozens of substations would overwhelm the company's ability to respond and could leave people without power for weeks and weeks. Your power is out because some fragile Karen didn't want a drag show to take place. If you're mad, let her know. But you won't. I sincerely hope the FBI and Homeland Security throw the book at these fuckers for being domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorism rears its ugly head. The Pilot newspaper in Southern Pines reported that a wooden post holding up a gate had been snapped at one of the substations and that it was lying in an access road Sunday morning. Oh no, not the wooden post holding up a gate. How could anyone have subverted that impenetrable fortress of security? A similar thing happened in CA a few years ago. Caused a power outage. The person who did the shooting knew what they were doing. The targeted specific equipment. This caused the power company to spend a lot of extra money on hardening their substations. These are acts of terrorism and need to be treated as such. This threat has made me fully understand that if anything happens to the power in the States, we're fucked on an unimaginable level. The $400 I spent on my generator was the best money I've ever spent. Currently saving for a dedicated one for the house and solar. Unlikely they'll ever catch the culprits, but, on the off chance they do, they should be charged with domestic terrorism at the minimum. FBI, Homeland Security, needs to jump on this now. As a person who stays alive via medical equipment requiring electricity, this is so upsetting to think of all the people suffering BC of an asshole with a gun. I'm sure there will be copycat acts like this pretty soon. I looked at the title, assuming it was in Ukraine, and then bam, out of nowhere, North Carolina. Power outages could last days after domestic terror attack. There. Fix the headline. This is terrorism. Actual terrorism. No one randomly vandalizes substations. Ukraine is currently in a war during which explosives are blowing infrastructure up. Meanwhile, the US gets their infrastructure messed up by their own citizens due to brainwashed rage. Every other house has a security cam, but nothing monitoring power stations? How about terrorists target critical infrastructure in politically motivated attack? Funny how this isn't labeled terrorism. Correction: power outages could last days after acts of domestic terrorism. Seeing how difficult and devastating this is for those affected in NC, It makes me wonder how in the world Ukraine is restoring power across that country given the attacks to their power grid by Russia. So just to be clear, anyone can take small arms and a couple friends and knock out major components of the American electrical grid. I feel safe. Try shooting up a substation during NASCAR season, and you're a dead man. How is Homeland Security not involved? Imagine if the US war on terror went as hard at home as we did abroad. Can I have the taxes I spend on cops put towards that instead? Would not be surprised if the morons who did this live in the county and do not have power right now. If they'd have come down hard on those Bundy boys a few years ago, this shit wouldn't be happening. They think they can get away with anything. Terrorism charges incoming. Let's treat them as the enemy combatants they are. Where I'm from we call that domestic terrorism. This is an act of domestic terrorism. Imagine a coordinated effort across a state. This wasn't even bombs, it was just shooting. It just shows how exposed we are. My brother and his family lost power because of this. Thankfully they have a generator that they have used often from power outages during heavy storms. My nephew has cystic fibrosis and his daily treatments require power. These fucks have endangered the lives of many. May they rot in hell. Going without power due to domestic terrorist attacks on infrastructure to own the libs. That's what happens when you don't treat domestic terrorism seriously. Another terrorist attack on American soil. WTF. This was a domestic terrorist attack targeting our infrastructure. I feel so safe knowing that the ultra-right conservatives are protecting my rights to liberty and freedom of expression. I am currently living in this county and a certain part of the population was upset about a drag show being held downtown, and this is speculated as to the reason for the attack. It didn't stop it though. I feel like this is a good time to buy one of those solar chargeable portable power packs, like those ones from Goal Zero with a built-in inverter and 5100 amp hours of capacity, for peace of mind. Why is the media calling the shootings at substations and not terrorist attack on NC's power grid? It was domestic terrorism. Can we at least call it what it is? Holy shit, journalism in 2022 has reverted back to the town crier from the 1400s. After domestic terrorism shootings. So when do we start putting armed security on power stations? Isn't that the Republican solution to everything where guns are involved? Yet another reason to consider at least battery backups. I used to teach for the Air Force. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long for someone to figure it out. Sure didn't expect the Taliban to be the ones doing it. Definitely a step up from the Metcalf attack. They should hunt down those terrorists and send them to Guantanamo. We seem to have a problem identifying terrorism if it is domestic. That worries me when it is so obvious and brazen. The GOP, America's biggest domestic terrorism organization.